In today's video, I talk about how buyers should approach today's market and some tactics they can employ with regards to pursuing a property that can avoid bidding wars. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. You can find my contact information with regards to my Gmail, my office information in the description box with regards to my social media platforms. Feel free to get in touch with me with any questions you may have regarding any topics covered in this video or topics covered in previous videos. You can also Google my name and find my Google reviews as well if you wish to work with me. Lastly, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. That would be greatly appreciated, but of course, you're not obliged to do so whatsoever, as I always like to say. So anyways, let's get to the points of today's video, which is less of a number-oriented video. On this channel, I really like to dig deep on the numbers and the trends, and I have charts and line graphs and bar graphs and sold data on the screen all the time. Very boring for a lot of people. I'm actually surprised people watch those videos, but I guess they're interested in the minutia and detail and area analysis and number analysis. For this video, it's a little bit more general. And once again, less quantitative and more qualitative. And it's mainly with regards to how should buyers approach this hot, steaming hot market that we're dealing with now. Now, let me just make a couple of points clear off the bat before I get into some of the advice I may give buyers in today's market. First and foremost, this is general advice. As the buyers who have worked with me know from this channel, even sellers, I really like to sit down with my clients to see the particular case, the particular finances, their particular goals, investor, end user, just get into the details and lead them down the right path for them. So this is general advice and it may not apply to everyone. Secondly, having established that it's general advice, I would like to further establish that I by no means can be judgmental toward the bidding wars, because that's exactly what I do for my sellers. If you've watched this channel, I've made mention several times of the transactions where I sold a property thus far this year. It's been a great year, $20,000 above asking to $130,000 above asking. But nonetheless, the point I'm trying to establish here is that I'm not going to be judgmental with regards to the bidding war strategy, because I employ it when obviously the situation calls for it, of course, for my sellers. When I'm working with a seller, my job is to derive as much money for them as possible and get the best deal for them as possible. And that's in sharp contrast to when I'm working with a buyer. And to further establish buyers' frustrations right now, if you're a buyer for a condominium, your budget is $800,000 in the city of Toronto, in a very hot market such as this, right? Let's say you even are looking at a particularly hot market, as I've established thus far in this year, which is like, for instance, North York, right? What happens, right? You get to see a property once, maybe if you're lucky for an hour, but most likely nowadays the showing limits are for 30 minutes. You are seeing that property in midst of 5 other units that day. You're rushing to get to the next building, so you're not late for your appointment. There's buyers waiting after you. There's buyers waiting before you. So it really feels like a conveyor belt in a factory. You're just going in and out, and you can't really even take in the unit properly. And that's all before the bidding date, where there is probably going to be 4 to 5 other offers. And that's a good case, right? I've seen units with clients where that number was actually 18 to 20, no exaggeration whatsoever. You're facing a situation where you have to waive your protection for inspection, waive your protection for financing, not really waive your protection for status of certificate, because if the selling side knows what they're doing, they will offer status upfront. But I've seen that also, waive your protection for status, which I recommend not to do if you have not seen the status of certificate, unless it's a very, very new building. So there's no doubt that buyers are in a horrible predicament right now. What can you do as a buyer in today's market? What are some outside of the box strategies that you can employ if you want to avoid bidding wars at all costs, which necessarily I don't think you should be completely close to those, because if the right unit comes onto the market for you and it meets 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 items of your criteria, then you should probably go for that, particularly so if you are assured in your financing. But once again, we're establishing a hypothetical scenario where someone does not want to go into a bidding whatsoever. Number one, what you can do is ask your real estate agent, what exclusives or off-market properties do you have in your network? So if you are a buyer in today's market, make sure you interview your real estate agent. Make sure you ask them, well, what properties do you have, if any, that are off the market? Do you have any suitable properties for me? Because ideally, your real estate agent, particularly once again from the buyer's perspective, should have some inventory that is his own, not even necessarily on the market, although that's also a possible solution if he has or she has inventory of their own and sellers of their own that are on the market as well, but inventory that's also off the market. That way you kind of get to avoid competition. Now, one key thing I want to emphasize, if your agent does not have any off-market properties or exclusive listings or sellers of their own that would be good for you, that is less than ideal. But actually the other side of the spectrum, the excess of that is also bad. What am I referring to? Is if they're only trying to take you towards properties they have themselves, because on that side of the spectrum, they're actually most likely acting pretty self-interested and they're trying to get double commission. Find an agent who is somewhere in the middle where they do have ample inventory and ample products supply off market or their own listings, but they take the extra steps and they do the proper due diligence to make sure that what you want and what they have is a proper fit. So that's number one. Number two, another way buyers can avoid bidding wars in this market is by looking for properties that have had a price reduction. So let's say you're in the market for once again, a semi-detached up to 1.7 million. In today's market, in today's very hot market, if you're looking for such properties, you're gonna find listings that are listed at maybe 1.599, some cases maybe 1.549, 1.608, or something like that. And you kind of reverse engineering to see, well, this listing that's listed for a bidding price of 1.599, would that be in my 1.7 budget, right? You're kind of reverse calculating. You can do that, or you can search for properties that were initially listed for 1.599 or 1.499, but are now relisted because they failed to sell at bidding war. Or properties that were initially listed around 1.8, but are now listed around 1.725, 1.75, because they just didn't get much traction and there was a price reduction. Now, of course, there's always a reason why that property probably had a price reduction. Most times it probably needs some work. It's less than ideal location. There's certain maybe defects with the property. So you must also do your due diligence as to why it didn't initially sell. Similarly with the other side of the spectrum, where we're looking at a property that failed to sell at bidding war and now is relisted around market value. So it's not the ideal alternative, right? But it is merely one option at your disposal and should be considered. You can find diamonds in the rough like this. There have been many times where a seller has listed something for bidding, they did not get the offer they wanted, they actually relisted at market value, and they actually became a little bit more flexible. And I've experienced that from my buyers. We actually went on a property last year where the property was listed about $300,000 below market value. They said that they got many offers, but they didn't want to go with any. My suspicion was that they didn't actually get any offers. Nonetheless, when they were listed around market value, we went in, we did our due diligence. We saw that we actually found the diamond in the rough. We got lucky, the stars aligned, and it was a really good property, and we didn't have to face much competition because they were around market value. So that's number two. Number three leads me to what I see happen actually more than you would believe. What you will have in a very hot market is, which is actually a little bit of elaboration of my previous routes you can take as a buyer, which is exclusively looking for properties that have come on the market at the same time and are at risk of cannibalization. What do I mean by that? Let's say you're looking for a very particular type of property in a very specific area, such as City Place, for instance. and you see for the 1+1 you want in this particular corridor of City Place, there's actually 4 things on the market right now. And all 4 came onto the market within the last 3 days. And all 4 actually have a offer presentation date around the same date. So just an example, so 3 of the properties have an offer presentation for 5 p.m. on March 23rd, and the 4th one has an offer presentation for 9 p.m. March 23rd. Now, chances are in a very hot market, what will happen is all 4 will probably sell. But that's not a certainty. There have been many times where I've seen a pocket full of listings all presenting offers at the same time. And guess what? Out of the 4, 1 didn't sell, or 1 sold, but the buyer never brought the deposit. This way, if you try to search, of course, this is the job of your real estate agent, ideally. If you try to search according to offer presentation date within a very immediate vicinity, you can actually find some listings that may fall through the cracks. And in this way, you would revert back to the second route, which is going for a property that has had a price change. Anyways, these are routes you can take as a buyer in today's market, along with your realtor and real estate agent, if you want to avoid bidding wars at all costs. Once again, I do not recommend you avoid bidding wars at all costs. And overall, my general philosophy with regards to the market, and this is not something brilliant that I've made up myself, many people have probably said it in the same exact way, but I think it's quite true, is that it's very difficult to time the market. And instead of trying to time the market, you should focus on time in the market. And there is only very few times in recent memory where you can actually time the market. The most recent time that I recall was the near end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, where it was truly a down market, a buyer's market, and many people were afraid of condos. But I worked with a lot of investors and we were opportunistic, and we actually did successfully time the market and jump in when it was low. But that's just a 1 in 100 exception. Most times it's very difficult to time the market. Anyways, that's Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate, Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, thank you very much for watching. Contact info, description box. Feel free to get in touch with me, subscribe, comment, rate, and review, all that jazz. Thank you, stay safe, and stay tuned.